I never thought the sound of a wedding bell could break a heart instead of blessing it. The white roses smelled too sweet that morning, too pure for the lie I was about to live. My name is Isabella Romano, and today was supposed to be my perfect day, the day I'd become Mrs. Daniel Marquez. The dress clung to me like a promise I no longer believed in. Silk, ivory, breathtaking, and heavier than guilt. I stood in front of the mirror in my bridal suite, veil trembling in my hands. Someone knocked. 5 minutes. Miss Romano, the wedding planner, called from the other side. 5 minutes until forever. 5 minutes until I said yes to a man who didn't love me. Not really. Daniel had charm, status, a smile that looked good in photographs, and a heart as cold as marble underneath. But no one in my family cared about that. They cared about the business deal his father sealed with ours, a merger disguised as a marriage. I stared at my reflection, the trembling lips, the tear threatening to ruin my mascara, and whispered, "Don't cry now." But the mirror didn't listen. When the church doors opened, all eyes turned to me. Candles flickered like tiny breaths. My father smiled, proud. Daniel stood at the altar, handsome, rehearsed, perfect, and I walked, step by step, heartbreaking in slow motion. Then, halfway down the aisle, I saw him, a stranger. He sat in the last pew, head bowed, dark suit perfectly cut. Shadows hid most of his face, but when his eyes lifted, deep, commanding, impossibly calm, my steps faltered. He didn't belong there, but somehow it felt like he did. The man's gaze didn't wander like everyone else's. He looked right into me, like he knew something. I didn't. I swallowed hard and forced myself to keep walking. The music played on. My heart did not. When the priest said, "If anyone objects to this union," silence until it wasn't. The church doors burst open again, and the same man from the back pew was suddenly standing in the center aisle. Gasps echoed. My father shouted. Daniel's jaw tightened, and the man said, his voice steady, low and dangerous, "She's not marrying you." Time stopped. My bouquet hit the floor. Every soul in that church froze, except mine, which was already running. Daniel's men reached for him, but the stranger moved faster. He didn't shout, didn't threaten. He just walked toward me, his eyes never leaving mine. And in that moment, I did the unthinkable. I stepped toward him. He extended his hand. "Come with me now." 3 words, a command, a lifeline. I didn't ask who he was, didn't think, didn't breathe. I just ran. The crowd erupted behind us. Chaos, shouting, my mother's voice breaking, but his grip was firm, sure, and protective. We tore through the side door, out into the rain-soaked street, my veil tearing in the wind. He opened the door of a sleek black car, and before I could blink, we were speeding away. The church, my past, and my entire old life shrinking in the rearview mirror. And that was how I met Lorenzo De Luca, the man who ruined my wedding and saved my soul. The city blurred past the window, gray buildings, flashing lights, and the echoes of everything I'd just left behind. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the rain. I didn't even know his name yet. All I knew was the warmth of his hand still lingering on mine, and the way the air inside that car felt too quiet, too heavy, too alive. I turned toward him. He was driving fast, eyes fixed on the road, jaw tight, like a storm held behind silence. "Who are you?" I finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer right away, just flicked a glance toward me. Dark eyes, unreadable. Then back to the road. "You're safe now?" he said simply. "Safe?" I almost laughed. I was sitting in a stranger's car, in a wedding dress soaked with rain, running from a man I was supposed to marry. "Safe," I repeated, voice shaking. "You just dragged me out of a church full of people and you call this safe?" He exhaled through his nose, calm, unbothered. "I saved you from a mistake you didn't want to make. How do you know what I wanted?" He turned to me then, and for the first time I saw him clearly. Black hair, slightly tousled from the rain, strong jawline shadowed by stubble, a small scar running across his left brow, like a secret he never meant to tell. And those eyes, cold but magnetic, like a sea you'd drown in willingly. "Because," he said quietly, "I was watching you long before you saw me." My stomach twisted. "Watching me?" He nodded once. "Not in the way you think. Your fiancé, Daniel Marcus, he's not who he says he is. And neither are the people he works for." I stared at him, stunned. "You expect me to believe that?" He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a small black envelope, and tossed it onto my lap. "Believe what you see," he murmured. Inside were photos, grainy, nighttime shots, Daniel standing outside a warehouse, men in suits, boxes exchanged for envelopes, and then Daniel shaking hands with a man whose face I recognized from the news, a cartel name whispered in fear. My blood ran cold. I looked up at him, voice breaking. "What is this? Why would you have these?" He hesitated, eyes softening just slightly. "Because Isabella, your fiancé owes my family a debt. And men like Daniel don't pay with money, they pay with lives." It hit me then, the accent, The authority, the way people had stepped aside when he walked down that church aisle. I whispered, "You're one of them, aren't you?" His gaze met mine. Sharp, unflinching. "I'm Lorenzo DeLuca," he said. "My family runs what Daniel pretends to control." The name hit like thunder. I'd heard it before, whispered in newspapers, in rumors, in late-night news about Italian crime families. I backed against the car door, breath uneven. "You kidnapped me," he shook his head slowly. "No, I took you away before he could trade you." My pulse stopped. "Trade me? For what?" He looked out the window, rain streaking across glass like tears. For his freedom. The car fell silent again, except for the sound of rain, the beating of my heart, and the distant hum of fate rearranging itself. I didn't know whether to thank him or hate him, but for reasons I couldn't explain. I didn't tell him to stop the car. I just sat there, staring at the man who'd ruined my wedding, and realizing he might have also just saved my life. The car stopped just before dawn. We'd driven for hours, through city lights, winding roads, and silence so thick it became a second heartbeat. When the engine finally died, I realized we were no longer anywhere near Rome. No sounds of traffic, no streetlights, just the faint crash of waves in the distance. He stepped out first, opening my door before I could even reach for the handle. "Come on," he said, his voice low, calm, too calm for what my heart was doing inside my chest. I hesitated. "Where are we?" "Safe house," he said simply. "No one knows this location, not even my men." His words were both comfort and warning. The house stood on a cliff, modern, cold stone walls softened by ivy and moonlight. Inside, it smelled of wood smoke and rain. A single lamp cast warm light across the living room. He motioned toward a couch. "Sit." I didn't. I stood there, wedding dress wrinkled, mascara streaked, my world still spinning. "I don't understand any of this," I said quietly. "You crashed my wedding? Dragged me out of the church like some kind of hero?" He cut in, almost smirking. I glared at him. "Kidnapper." He took a slow breath, removed his jacket, and draped it over the back of a chair. Beneath the white shirt, I saw the faint outline of scars, long, pale reminders of violence. He caught me looking. His eyes softened. "I'm not here to hurt you, Isabella. I'm here to make sure no one else does." I sank onto the couch, exhausted. He poured a glass of water and set it in front of me. "Drink." His voice wasn't harsh. It was commanding in a way that made obedience feel like safety. I hated that I trusted it. As I took a sip, my hands trembled. The silence between us thickened, but not with fear, with something heavier, something that hummed beneath my ribs. Finally I asked, "Why me? Why save me?" He leaned against the counter and crossed his arms. "Because you were innocent. Because Daniel wasn't marrying you out of love. He was marrying you out of leverage." "Leverage?" "Your father's company." He looked away. "Daniel planned to sell it to the same people who destroyed mine." I blinked. "Your family?" He nodded. "My father trusted the wrong men. They turned on us. I lost everything. Except this." He pointed to the silver ring on his finger, engraved with a family crest. It wasn't a symbol of power. It looked like loss carved into metal. There was pain behind every word he said. And it wasn't the pain of a criminal. It was the pain of someone who'd been betrayed too many times to believe in goodness anymore. He handed me a folded blanket. "You can sleep in the guest room," he said. "Door locks from the inside." I hesitated before taking it. "And where will you sleep?" He gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I don't." He turned to leave, then stopped at the doorway. "Isabella," he said without looking back. "Don't call anyone. Don't open the door for anyone. Tomorrow I'll explain everything." And then he was gone. I sat there in silence, surrounded by a house that felt too big for two people and too small for all our secrets. Through the open window, the sea whispered against the cliffs, lonely, endless, untamed. I didn't know who Lorenzo DeLuca really was. A savior? A criminal? A liar? But for the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid of being alone. I only felt afraid of what would happen if I stopped being alone. The sun woke me before I was ready. Light spilled through gauzy curtains, soft and golden, painting everything in quiet. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then the events of yesterday came crashing back. The church, the rain, Lorenzo's hand pulling me into another life. I sat up, still wearing his jacket over my dress. It smelled faintly of smoke and something expensive, leather and danger. The house was silent except for the low hum of the sea outside. I wandered into the kitchen, half expecting him to be gone. But he was there, standing by the window, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, coffee mug in hand, morning light caught in his hair, turning the dark strands gold at the edges. He didn't notice me at first. Or maybe he did, and pretended not to. That seemed like something he would do. When he finally turned, his gaze met mine with quiet amusement. "Good, you're awake." I swallowed. "You didn't exactly give me sleeping pills last night." He almost smiled. "If I wanted you unconscious, Isabella, You would have been. I blinked. Is that supposed to make me feel better? He shrugged. It's supposed to make you realize you're safe here. He poured a second cup of coffee and set it in front of me without asking. No sugar, no milk, strong, bitter, real. It was strange. No man had ever looked at me like that before. Not with hunger, not with pity, just recognition. Why do you keep saying I'm safe? I asked. From whom? He hesitated, then walked to the table, leaning on his palms. From the same men Daniel worked for. The ones who killed my brother. The air shifted. Grief hung heavy between us. I'm sorry, I said softly. I didn't know. You weren't supposed to. His voice cracked slightly, the first time his armor slipped. He turned away, shoulders tense, as if saying more would break something he wasn't ready to lose. I watched him in silence, the way he moved, the weight he carried like a shadow stitched to his soul. For a man with power, he looked tired of it, like every breath was another war he didn't want to fight. Lorenzo, I said quietly, why did you come to my wedding? He looked up. Because Daniel was about to sell you off as collateral. You were never meant to be his wife. You were meant to be his bargaining chip. I gripped the edge of the table. And you just, what? Decided to save me out of kindness? He gave a dry laugh. Kindness doesn't survive long in my world. I did it because I couldn't let another innocent get destroyed by the same people who took everything from me. Something inside me shifted. I should have been terrified. Instead, I just understood. Later, I wandered through the mansion while he made calls. The rooms were spotless, minimalist, but here and there, traces of a life peeked through. An old piano, a faded photograph of two boys on a fishing boat, a book left open on the table, poetry, Italian, underlined in pencil. Even the darkest heart seeks light it doesn't deserve. My breath caught. I didn't need to ask who had underlined it. When he found me staring at the photo, he didn't scold me. He just said, "That was Enzo, my little brother." What happened to him? His eyes darkened. He trusted someone he shouldn't have. That's all you need to know right now. We stood there for a moment, two people bound. By loss we didn't share, but somehow understood. Then he said quietly, "You shouldn't stay in that dress anymore. There are clothes in the guest room closet." I nodded. "Thank you." As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me again. "Isabella." I looked back. "If you want to leave," he said, "I won't stop you. But if you stay, you have to trust me, even when it doesn't make sense." His gaze held mine, steady, unflinching, and something inside me whispered that I already did. It rained again that night, not the angry kind of storm that steals roofs and power lines, just a steady whisper on the windows, the kind that makes the world sound smaller. Lorenzo had lit a fire in the hearth, its light painted gold across his face, softening the edges that daylight kept sharp. I sat curled on the couch in one of his shirts. Too big. Sleeves hanging past my wrists. It smelled faintly of him, coffee, cedar, and rain. For a long time we didn't speak. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was comfortable, like two people catching the same rhythm of breath. Finally I asked, "Do you ever sleep?" He looked up from the file in his hands. "Not well." "Nightmares?" He gave a small shrug. "Memories." The way he said it made my heart ache. I wanted to ask what he remembered, but I didn't. Instead I said, "Coffee won't help." He smirked faintly. "Neither does whiskey. I've tried both." He closed the file and leaned back, eyes flickering toward the flames. "You haven't asked about your family," he said. I blinked. "My father? My mother?" He nodded. "They think you ran. Daniel told them you left because of him." "Because of him?" I repeated, a bitter laugh catching in my throat. "That part's true." Lorenzo's gaze softened. "You don't have to defend him anymore." "I'm not. I just don't know how to hate him properly yet." The honesty surprised even me. He studied me quietly. "You're stronger than you think, Isabella." "No." I looked into the fire. "I'm just tired of pretending I'm not scared." Something in his expression shifted, like my words had hit a place he didn't guard fast enough. He said, barely above a whisper, "Fear keeps you alive, but it also keeps you alone later." After he made us dinner, pasta and silence, I found myself helping him clean up. Our hands brushed when we both reached for the same glass. Neither of us moved right away. For a second, the world narrowed to that one touch, soft heartbeat effect. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "You should rest," I smiled faintly. "You always give orders, only when they're meant to keep people alive." "Then maybe I'll obey. This once." That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt too full of thoughts. Through the half-open door, I saw him on the balcony, cigarette glowing like a tiny star. Without thinking, I stepped out. The air was cool, salt-sweet from the sea. He didn't turn as I came beside him. "You'll catch a cold," he murmured. "You'll get lung cancer," I shot back. He chuckled, low, real, unguarded. First time I'd heard that sound. "You laugh," I said. "Didn't think you could." He exhaled smoke toward the dark horizon. I forgot I could. We stood there a while, saying nothing, just the rhythm of waves below and the echo of things neither of us was ready to confess. Before I went inside, he said my name, quiet, careful. Isabella. I turned. His eyes held something raw. Half apology, half promise. If I ever seem like someone you should fear, remember tonight instead. And just like that, the walls he'd built around his heart cracked. Even if just for a moment, I didn't touch him. I didn't need to. I simply whispered, "Good night, Lorenzo," he answered. "Buonanotte, Isabella." The words sounded like a secret I wasn't supposed to hear. Morning came cold and gray. The sea outside looked restless, like it remembered something I didn't. I found Lorenzo in the kitchen, already dressed, already tense. He was reading a message on his phone, his jaw tight, his knuckles white around the screen. "Bad news?" I asked softly. He looked up, startled for a second, like he'd forgotten I was there. Then his expression settled into that quiet control again, the mask he always wore before letting truth escape. "Nothing I can't handle," he said, but I saw it. The flicker in his eyes that said, "Everything is unraveling." Breakfast was silent, the kind of silence that isn't peace, it's waiting. Finally, I couldn't take it. "Lorenzo, what's happening?" He looked up from his plate, then pushed it away. "There's been movement in Rome," he said. "The men who financed Daniel's deal, they're looking for you." My stomach turned cold. "Why? I didn't do anything." "They think you know where the papers are." "What papers?" He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Your father signed over a majority of his company assets days before your wedding. Daniel was supposed to deliver them. When you disappeared, they assumed you took them." My throat went dry. "Are they dangerous?" His gaze locked on mine. "Yes." He stood, paced once, then stopped near the window. "I can move you to another safe house, but I'll need time to clear the route." I shook my head. "I'm not running again." "You don't have a choice." "Yes, I do," I snapped. "You pulled me out of my wedding and turned my life into a nightmare. I deserve to know the truth." He turned sharply, and for the first time I saw fear flash across his face. "You want truth?" His voice broke, then hardened. "The man you were about to marry works for the same people who put a bullet in my brother." I froze. The air left my lungs like I'd been hit. "Your brother?" I whispered. He nodded, jaw trembling before he forced it still. "Marco, he trusted them. Thought he could make peace, and they killed him for it." Silence hung like fog. He continued. Softer now. Almost broken. "I swore I'd destroy everyone who helped them. Daniel was the last name on that list." The room swayed. I pressed a hand to the counter just to stay upright. "So saving me," I said slowly. "Was it revenge?" He looked up sharply. "No. It started that way, maybe. But then I saw you. The way you looked at him, terrified even while you smiled. I knew. Knew what? That you were just another piece they were using." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Rain streaked down the glass behind him, and the fire hissed low in the grate. Finally, I said quietly, "You can't keep saving me." "Lorenzo." He turned, eyes dark but vulnerable. "Then stop making me want to." Before either of us could say another word, his phone buzzed again. One look at the screen, and all the warmth drained from his face. He swore under his breath. "They found the car. Here? Near the main road. We need to move. Now." He grabbed a bag from under the counter, slung his gun holster over his shoulder, and threw me a jacket. "Stay close. Don't talk. Don't look back." We rushed out into the rain, his hand gripping mine. The sea roared below the cliff, wild and unforgiving. Somewhere in the distance, an engine started. Headlights cut through the fog. He pushed me toward the trees. "Run, Lorenzo." I said, "Run, Isabella." The forest swallowed us whole, the sound of the waves fading behind, replaced by the thunder of footsteps and gunfire splitting the air. Branches whipped against my face as I ran. Cold mud splashed beneath my feet, lungs burning, dress torn halfway up my leg. Lorenzo's hand gripped mine like a lifeline, dragging me through the darkness. The forest wasn't quiet. It was alive with danger. Behind us, headlights flashed through the trees. Men shouted in Italian. A gunshot split the night. He pushed me down behind a fallen tree. "Stay low," he whispered, breath hot against my ear. I could feel his heartbeat, wild, fast, matching mine. Another shot cracked. Bark splintered inches from my face. "Lorenzo, shh." His hand pressed over my mouth. "Don't move." Pause. Tense silence. Heavy breathing. We waited. The rain masked our breathing. The storm muffled footsteps. For a moment, it felt like the world was holding its breath with us. When the sounds faded, he looked over at me. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though my hands trembled. He studied me for a second, then reached out and wiped a streak of dirt from my cheek with his thumb. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured. "I didn't exactly have a choice," I whispered back. His jaw tightened. "No, but I did. What do you mean? He looked away, exhaling hard. I could have left you there at the church. Should have. But I didn't. Why? He met my gaze. And for the first time, he didn't look like a man built from stone, because when you looked at me that day, he said, voice breaking, you looked like someone who'd already lost everything. Something inside me shattered and reformed in the same breath. The sound of tires crunching on gravel snapped us back to reality. He grabbed my wrist. We moved now. We ran again, deeper into the pines. Cold wind stung my face, but adrenaline kept me upright. At the edge of the forest, a small cabin came into view. A forgotten hunter's lodge, half collapsed, hidden by moss and shadows. Lorenzo kicked the door open, ushered me inside, and then slammed it shut. He locked it, checked the windows, and then turned to me. Sit, he said. You're shaking. I'm fine. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. You're not. Soft, intimate silence. I tried to speak, but my voice cracked. They want to kill you too, don't they? He froze. Yes. One word. Heavy. Final. He dropped his gun on the table and leaned against it, shoulders heaving. Rain drummed against the roof, the only sound between us. I can't keep running forever, I whispered. He looked up slowly. Then don't. What does that mean? It means, let me end this. His voice was sharp, but his eyes were soft, pleading. You'd die for revenge? I said quietly. No. He took a step closer. I'd die to make sure you never have to live afraid again. The space between us dissolved. I felt the heat of his breath and the scent of rain on his jacket. I didn't realize I was crying until he reached up and brushed a tear away. His hand lingered there, on my cheek. Isabella, he whispered. Don't, I breathed. Don't make me care about you now. Too late. And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, fierce, the kind of kiss that only happens when two people aren't sure if they'll survive the night. For one breathless second, there was no danger. No past. No revenge. Only us. Two broken people finding something real in the ruin. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against mine. Next time they come, he said, voice raw. We fight back. I nodded, trembling. I'm not leaving you. He smiled, just slightly. Good. Because I wasn't asking you to. The storm had passed by morning, but the air still tasted of fear. Lorenzo stood near the window, sunlight slicing across his face like truth trying to break through lies. I sat on the edge of the old cabin bed, watching him reload his gun with quiet, controlled precision. Every click echoed like a heartbeat in the silence. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning since last night. Lorenzo, what did you mean when you said Daniel was part of the same group that killed your brother? He looked at me for a long moment, eyes dark, unreadable. Then he said softly, It's more complicated than you think. I think I deserve complicated by now, I said. He exhaled. All right. He walked to the table, pulled out a small folded envelope from his jacket, and tossed it down in front of me. Your father's signature, the company transfer papers, but look at the second name. I opened it slowly, eyes scanning the page. The second signature made my blood run cold. Giovanni De Luca. I looked up, breath shaking. That's my father, Lorenzo finished quietly. My throat went dry. But that means... Yes, he said, his voice bitter. Our families were partners once. Your father and mine. They built a business empire together, until greed destroyed everything. He continued, eyes distant, remembering. When my father found out Giovanni was laundering money through the same network Daniel now works for, he tried to pull out. They didn't like that, so they killed him. Then they killed Marco. I was next. He turned toward me, voice trembling now. Your father didn't pull the trigger, Isabella, but he didn't stop it either. I shook my head, tears blurring the paper in my hands. No. My father, he couldn't. He's not innocent. Lorenzo cut in, voice breaking. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I knew you'd never believe me. The world tilted. The walls of the cabin seemed to close in. I stood, pacing, clutching the envelope like a weapon. My whole life. All those business trips. The late night calls, the guards around our house. God, I thought he was protecting me, but he was protecting himself. Lorenzo stepped closer, cautious, his voice gentler now. I'm sorry, Bella. I didn't want you to find out this way. Don't call me that, I whispered. He flinched like the word hurt him. I don't know what's real anymore, I said, my voice breaking. You save me, you kiss me, and now you tell me my father is the reason your family's dead? He didn't move. Didn't defend himself. Just said quietly, yes. I turned toward the window, trying to catch my breath. Outside, the sun was rising over the sea, gold and cruelly beautiful. Finally, I said, so what now? You kill him? Lorenzo's eyes lifted. If I wanted revenge, I would have done it years ago. Then why? He walked closer, stopping just a breath away. Because when I saw you, I saw the one thing they never could corrupt. He touched my cheek gently, his voice barely audible. You were the proof that not everything our fathers built had to end in blood. Tears stung my eyes. And yet here we are. Yes, he whispered, but maybe we can end it differently. Before I could answer, the sound of an engine echoed from outside. Lorenzo stiffened instantly, instincts snapping into place. He grabbed his gun and motioned for me to stay back. Stay here. I caught his hand. No, I'm coming with you. He hesitated, then nodded once. Then stay close. We crept toward the window. A black SUV was pulling up the muddy path. He muttered a curse. They found us. How? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. They won't take you. As the car doors opened, I saw the glint of weapons. 3 men stepped out. One of them, broad shoulders, dark suit, cold eyes, smiled when he saw the cabin. Lorenzo's expression changed instantly. Recognition. Rage. Who is that? I whispered. Enzo Morelli, he said, the man who ordered my brother's death. Stay down, he said, voice like steel. If something happens to me, you run to the east side. There's a trail. Stop, I said, gripping his arm. You're not dying here. He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment, all the violence and history in the world disappeared. Then neither are you, he whispered. And as the first bullet shattered the window, the war that had started with their fathers finally came for us both. Glass exploded. The first bullet tore through the window frame, splintering wood inches from my head. Down! Lorenzo shouted. He shoved me behind the table, flipping it onto its side as cover. Gunfire rattled through the cabin. Sharp, metallic, and too close. The smell of smoke filled the air. My hands shook as I pressed against the floor. Lorenzo, I'm here. He fired twice. Controlled. Precise. 2 silhouettes dropped outside. The third ducked behind the SUV, returning fire. Lorenzo's voice was calm and practiced. One left. I'll draw him out. No, I grabbed his sleeve. You'll get killed. He gave me a look, a half smile that broke something inside me. Not tonight. Then he was gone, darting out the back door into the rain. I stayed crouched, heart hammering. Lightning flashed, then the sound of struggle. I couldn't stay still. I found the small pistol he'd dropped on the floor, cold and heavy in my trembling hand. I stepped outside. The rain was relentless, washing blood into the mud. 2 bodies near the trees. Lorenzo and Enzo locked in a brutal fight near the SUV. They were both soaked, both bleeding, and both too angry to stop. Enzo swung first. Lorenzo ducked and slammed him against the car. A shot went off. Wild. I froze, gun trembling in my grip. Lorenzo, he turned toward me just as Enzo pulled a knife. Everything slowed. The lightning, the rain, my heartbeat, all became one long scream inside my chest. I lifted the pistol, hands shaking, eyes burning. The knife flashed. I fired. Enzo staggered, staring at me in disbelief. Then he fell. The world went quiet except for the rain. Lorenzo stood there, breathing hard, chest rising and falling. He looked at me, not shocked, not angry, just achingly human. You saved my life, he said softly. My hands shook harder. I didn't mean to. He stepped forward, took the gun gently from my hand, and tossed it aside. Don't look at him. Look at me. I did. His eyes, dark, fierce, alive, anchored me in the chaos. He brushed a wet strand of hair from my face. Are you hurt? No, I whispered, just shaking. He let out a breath, half relief, half disbelief. Good, because I can't lose you. Not now. We stood there, drenched, surrounded by ruin. For a moment, nothing existed but us. He leaned closer, forehead resting against mine. Rain ran between our lips as he whispered, You were never weak, Isabella. You just needed a reason to fight. And you? I whispered. He smiled faintly. I just needed someone worth living for. He kissed me again, slower this time, not desperate, but certain, a promise sealed in blood and rain. When he pulled away, he said, We can't stay here. They'll send more. I nodded, glancing back toward the burning SUV. What now? He holstered his weapon, eyes sharp again. Now, he said, we end this, for both our families. 2 days later, we were back in Rome. The city didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a battlefield wearing perfume. Lorenzo drove in silence, his hands steady on the wheel, his jaw tight. Every red light reflected off his eyes like sparks waiting to ignite. I watched the streets blur past. Cafes, old cathedrals, and the square where my wedding was supposed to happen. It all looked like another life. Finally, I whispered, what happens when we walk into that house? He didn't look at me. That depends on how honest your father is willing to be. And if he isn't? Lorenzo's voice dropped, quiet and deadly. Then we make him be. The De Luca family estate was nothing like I remembered. The guards were gone. The gate stood open, as if the house itself were daring us to enter. Inside, the lights were dim. A single chandelier swayed slightly, dust catching the glow like ghosts in the air. Lorenzo's steps were silent beside me, calm, measured, but I could feel the storm behind his calm. My heart raced as we reached my father's study. The door was ajar. Voices echoed inside. I recognized one, my father's, the other, unfamiliar, cold. Lorenzo motioned for me to stay back, then pushed the door open. My father sat behind his desk, older than I remembered. The years had carved guilt into the lines around his mouth. Across from him stood a man in a gray suit, slick, smiling like he owned the air he breathed. The man turned. Well, he said, if it isn't the runaway bride. Lorenzo's gun was out before he finished speaking. Careful with your words, Bianchi, he said. So this was him. Matteo Bianchi, the financier. The man behind Daniel, behind everything. My father stood quickly. Isabella. My God, you're alive. I stepped back as he moved toward me. Don't. He froze. Lorenzo's voice was steady. Tell her the truth, Giovanni. My father's eyes flickered. Between guilt and pride, fear and defiance, he looked at me. Everything I did was to protect you. Protect me? I shot back. You sold your company. You sold your soul. He slammed his hand on the desk. You don't understand how power works, Isabella. Then make me understand, I said. Tell me why men had to die. Tell me why his family had to burn for your mistakes. Lorenzo's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent, letting me take control. My father's voice dropped. I didn't order their deaths. I tried to stop it, but Marco De Luca, he found out about the accounts. He was going to expose everything. I couldn't protect him. You didn't try. Lorenzo snapped. Giovanni turned toward him, anger flaring. I tried to save my daughter's life, not my business partner's son. The words hung there, poisonous. Lorenzo took a step forward, gun still raised. So you let my family die so yours could live? My father didn't answer. That silence was the confession. I stepped between them, tears burning my eyes. Lorenzo, don't. He looked at me, pain and fury warring inside him. I should, he said quietly. He deserves it. Maybe, I whispered. But you don't. For a moment, time stopped. The gun trembled slightly in his hand. Then he lowered it. He turned to my father. You'll give me the documents. The accounts. Everything you have on Bianchi. My father hesitated. Bianchi laughed softly. You really think he'll choose you over me, De Luca? Lorenzo aimed the gun at him this time. I don't need him to choose. I just need him to understand who's holding the weapon. My father finally opened the safe behind his desk and pulled out a file. He handed it over, eyes hollow. There, he said. You wanted the truth. Take it. Lorenzo snatched the folder, flipped it open, and scanned fast. It was all there. Proof of every illegal deal, every hidden name. Enough to bury them all, he muttered. But before we could leave, Bianchi smiled again. Slow. Dangerous. You think this ends with me, Lorenzo? I'm just the messenger, then. His phone buzzed. He pressed one button. Live feed appeared on the large monitor behind my father's desk. Video footage of the cabin, the one we left behind, engulfed, in flames. My blood turned cold. Bianchi smirked. You left too many bodies behind. The police will come for both of you. Lorenzo's voice was low. Then I guess we'll have to disappear before they do. He grabbed my hand. Come on, Isabella. We turned for the door as my father called after me. Don't trust him. He's just like them. I stopped and looked back. No, I said quietly. He's the only one who ever told me the truth. And as we walked out of that house, leaving behind the ghosts of two bloodlines, I knew there was no going back. The night swallowed the road ahead of us. Lorenzo didn't speak. He didn't need to. Every drop of rain that hit the glass sounded like a countdown we couldn't escape. I sat beside him, clutching the file against my chest, the file that could destroy half of Rome's underworld. Where are we going? I asked finally. He glanced at me, eyes hard but tired. There's someone I trust. Barely. He owes me a favor. Another mafia contact? A faint smirk. Not exactly. He's family. What's left of it. We drove for hours, through tunnels, up winding hills, until city lights disappeared and the silence of the countryside swallowed us. Finally, Lorenzo pulled off the road near an abandoned vineyard, Half the vines were dead. The house at the end of the gravel path looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. He parked, stepped out, and scanned the horizon before signaling me to follow. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rain. Lorenzo flipped a switch. One single bulb flickered to life, casting shadows across peeling wallpaper and an old piano in the corner. He exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. "This was my mother's house," he said quietly. I turned to him. "You never told me she lived here." "She didn't," he replied. "She died here." I froze. He looked at me, eyes distant. "They came for my father first. She hid me in the cellar. I was 10. My chest tightened. "Lorenzo." He shook his head, not wanting pity. "I thought I buried this place with her, but maybe this is where everything ends, or starts again." Later, by candlelight, he spread the documents across the table. Names, dates, offshore accounts. Every secret the De Luca and Bianchi families had buried, but one name kept appearing. Emilio De Luca. I frowned. "He's listed as a beneficiary, but he's supposed to be dead." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. "He was my cousin. My father's brother's son. If he's alive, then he might be the last heir." He nodded slowly. "And the one person who could take my claim away." Suddenly, the lights flickered, then went out. Lorenzo stood instantly. Gun drawn. "Stay behind me." I froze as a shadow moved outside the window. Then a knock, slow, deliberate, echoed through the door. Lorenzo aimed, voice sharp. "Who is it?" A voice answered from the dark, low, familiar, and calm. "Easy, cousin. You've been hard to find." My breath caught. The door creaked open. A tall man stepped in, dark coat, rain dripping from his hair. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Emilio," Lorenzo whispered. So he was real, the last heir. Emilio looked between us, his gaze resting on the open files. "So," he said, "you finally found father's sins." "You mean your father's empire?" Lorenzo replied coldly. Emilio chuckled. "Empire, sins. Same thing." Then his eyes landed on me. "And you must be the reason he hasn't killed half of Rome yet." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "Say her name again, and I'll forget we share blood." Emilio raised his hands, pretending peace. "Relax. I came to help." "Help?" I asked. "By sending men after us?" He smiled faintly. "Those weren't mine. There's someone else moving the pieces now." Lorenzo's eyes darkened. "Who?" Emilio stepped closer to the table, tapping a document. "This account here, it doesn't belong to Bianchi. It belongs to the man who funded both our families." "Who?" Lorenzo pressed. "Cesare Vitale," Emilio said. "The one they call the Cardinal." The room went cold. Even I had heard the name. A ghost who controlled everything. Politics, banks, the Vatican pipeline. Emilio's voice lowered. "He's cleaning house. Bianchi was just his pawn. And you two," he looked between us, "are next." Lorenzo's hand brushed against mine under the table. Not for comfort, but to remind me to stay calm. "We'll handle him," he said. Emilio tilted his head. "Then you'll need me," Lorenzo scoffed. "You? You ran from this life years ago." "I survived it," Emilio shot back. "And I know where the Cardinal keeps his ledgers. But I don't move for free," Lorenzo glared. "What do you want?" Emilio's smirk returned. "Half the accounts. And her protection." Lorenzo's expression turned to stone. "Touch her, and you won't live to sign the deal." Emilio laughed softly. "Ah, there's the fire I remember." He leaned forward. "I'll contact you when I'm ready. Until then, stay alive. Both of you." He turned, walking out into the rain. The door shut behind him, leaving silence and the weight of 1,000 buried secrets. I looked at Lorenzo. "What are we going to do?" He exhaled slowly. "Find the Cardinal before he finds us." "And Emilio?" He gave a grim half-smile. "He just made himself part of the game, and I don't lose." As lightning flashed through the window, I realized something terrifying and beautiful. The only man who could destroy Lorenzo De Luca was also the only man I couldn't live without. Rome slept under a storm that refused to pass. Lightning illuminated the marble domes for seconds at a time, just enough to remind us how small we were under its judgment. We moved through the narrow streets near the Vatican, cloaked and silent. The city that once blessed our love now watched us like a sinner at confession. Lorenzo's hand tightened around mine as we stopped before an unmarked iron gate, single cross carved into the stone beside it. "This is it," he whispered. "The Cardinal's vault is beneath the Archdiocese archives." I shivered. "You've been here before?" He nodded once. "When I was still my father's shadow." His tone changed, distant, heavy. "This is where they made their deals with the church. Laundered money through donations. Paid for sins with blood and gold." He looked at me. "Once we go in, there's no turning back." "I wasn't planning to," I said quietly. He smiled, small, fragile, then pushed the gate open. We descended a spiral staircase that smelled of damp stone and incense. Candles lined the walls, flickering weakly against the draft. At the bottom was a corridor lined with locked doors, each one marked with a symbol: a serpent, a cross, a sun. Lorenzo stopped before the one with a red seal. The ledgers will be behind this, he said. He pulled a small tool from his coat. Quick, silent, and the lock clicked open. Inside, the air was colder. Stacks of files, gold crosses, photographs of men shaking hands, politicians, priests, and mobsters. I stepped closer, my fingers brushing over a black leather book stamped with a gold emblem. It wasn't just a ledger. It was a confession. Suddenly, footsteps, slow, deliberate. Lorenzo motioned for silence. We hid behind a shelf just as the door opened. A tall man in a crimson robe entered, holding a candle. His face was half-shadowed, but his voice carried easily through the still air. Some sins, he said softly, are too useful to forgive. It was him, the cardinal. He set the candle down, opening a drawer, then his eyes lifted, sharp as knives, straight toward our hiding place. Come out, he said calmly. Both of you. Low strings tighten, heartbeat faster. Lorenzo stepped forward first, gun drawn. I followed, my pulse hammering. The cardinal didn't flinch. You must be the De Luca boy, he said. Your father warned me you'd be stubborn. Lorenzo's voice was cold. You killed my family. The cardinal smiled faintly. I cleansed your family. They were corrupt. You were meant to replace them, until you ran. He turned to me, studying my face. And you, Isabella, the daughter of Giovanni Russo, the one they called the Dove. My stomach turned. You knew about me? Of course, he said. You were the peace offering, the marriage that would unite both empires under God's silence. I felt my knees weaken. It wasn't fate. It was a deal. Lorenzo stepped closer, fury burning in his eyes. You used us. The cardinal tilted his head. I created you. Two broken souls bound by sin and love. How poetic. He reached for a file, and that's when Lorenzo fired. The bullet shattered the candle, plunging the room into darkness. Sparks, smoke, shouting in Italian from the corridor outside. Guards! The cardinal roared. Lorenzo grabbed my wrist. Run! We tore down the corridor, footsteps pounding behind us. The ledgers were clutched in my arms, pages fluttering in the draft. Bullets cracked against the walls. Candles tumbled and hissed out. We burst through a side door into the underground catacombs. Rows of ancient tombs stretching into blackness. I stumbled, almost falling, but Lorenzo caught me. His voice broke, whispers. Stay with me, Isabella. Almost there. At the far end, faint moonlight shone through a broken window. Freedom. But before we could reach it, a figure stepped from the shadows. Emilio, gun raised. Give me the files, he said. Voice calm but eyes wild. I told you, I don't move for free. Lorenzo froze. You sold us out. Emilio's smirk faded. I warned you the cardinal was cleaning house. He promised me protection, and you believed him. I believed survival, Emilio said. It's what De Lucas do best. Tense silence. Then, a gunshot, but not from Lorenzo. Emilio's eyes went wide. He stumbled back, a red bloom spreading on his shirt. Behind him stood the cardinal, smoking gun still raised. He looked at us one last time. Go on, run. Confession is for the living. Then he turned and walked into the dark. Lorenzo dropped to his knees beside Emilio. Blood, fast and dark. Emilio's voice trembled. He has more. The vault, under St. Michael's. Then his eyes went still. Lorenzo whispered something in Italian. I didn't understand. Maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. He rose slowly, took my hand, and said only one word. Finish it. We ran toward the window, the night wind tearing through the silence. Behind us, Rome burned with secrets. Ahead, only the truth and whatever it would cost to survive it. Rome was still burning when we reached the old quarter. The air reeked of rain and smoke, like the city itself was trying to cleanse its sins. St. Michael's Cathedral stood ahead, tall and silent against the storm, its spire cut through the clouds like a blade pointing at heaven. Lorenzo's hand rested on my shoulder as we stopped at the base of the stairs. This is it, he said quietly, the cardinal's last sanctuary. I looked up at the doors, carved angels, faces weathered by centuries of secrets. Feels more like a tomb, I whispered. He gave a faint smirk. Maybe it is. Inside, the cathedral was empty. Rows of candles flickered near the altar. The scent of incense mixed with damp stone and something older, dust, maybe, or memory. We moved down the aisle slowly, our footsteps echoing under the dome. Lightning flashed through stained glass, coloring the marble floor in crimson light. This is where my father was baptized, Lorenzo said. His voice softened, almost childlike. And where I buried him. I turned to him. You don't have to carry all of it, Lorenzo. He looked at me, eyes raw, unguarded. I don't know how not to. Before I could speak, he knelt at the altar and pressed his palm against the stone. With a low click, a section of the floor shifted. A hidden stairway revealed itself, winding down into darkness. I exhaled. How did you know? His jaw tightened. Because I watched him come down here once. With the cardinal, we descended slowly. The deeper we went, the colder it became, At the bottom, a vast chamber carved into rock, lined with marble statues of saints watching in silence. At the center stood a metal door, sealed with the same red insignia we'd seen before, a serpent wrapped around a cross. "This is the vault," Lorenzo whispered. He placed the ledger we'd stolen onto the floor, matching its emblem to the seal. A soft hum vibrated through the air, ancient machinery coming to life. The door creaked open, revealing a room filled with golden relics, coded files, and paintings worth millions. But one thing stood out, a single locked chest on a pedestal, engraved with the name Giovanni Russo. My breath caught. "That's my father's name." Lorenzo frowned. "Why would the cardinal keep it here?" He forced the lock open. Inside were papers and a photograph. My father, shaking hands with the cardinal, and next to them, a younger Lorenzo. I stepped back, dizzy. "What is this?" Lorenzo's face went pale. "I don't remember this." The cardinal's voice echoed from behind us. "Because you were never meant to." We turned. He stood at the entrance, calm as ever, a gun in his hand, robe glinting in the candlelight. "The De Lucas and Russos were bound by blood," he said softly. "A covenant made long before either of you were born." He raised the gun. "Your love was never rebellion, Isabella. It was prophecy." Lorenzo stepped forward, shielding me. "You manipulated us, every step of the way." The cardinal smiled faintly. "I guided you, toward your inheritance." He gestured toward the vault around us. "All of this, the wealth, the power, the legacy, it belongs to both of you now. The empire reborn through love and sin." My voice shook. "You destroyed everything we loved." He turned his eyes on me, cold, distant. "Everything must burn before it's purified." Lorenzo raised his gun. "I'm done with purification." The cardinal stumbled back, hand clutching his chest, blood dark against his robe. He looked up one last time, almost smiling. "Even the devil deserves a confessor." Then he fell. Lorenzo stood motionless, gun trembling. I stepped forward slowly, placing my hand over his. Whispers, "It's over." He turned to me, eyes wet, voice breaking. "No, it's just beginning." He looked at the vault, the gold, the papers, the power. "All this will destroy us if we let it." I nodded. "Then we burn it." He stared at me for a long moment, then smiled, a real one. We poured oil across the floor and stacked the ledgers and relics together. Lorenzo struck a match. Flames caught instantly, devouring centuries of sin. He took my hand, pulling me close as the fire rose. Light danced across his face, half angel, half sinner. "You once asked me what I wanted," he said. I nodded, tears glinting in the firelight. He whispered softly, "Peace and you." The flames roared higher, painting the saints in gold and shadow. We turned and walked out of the vault together, hand in hand, leaving behind everything that ever hurt us. We walked out of St. Michael's as the fire behind us devoured the past. Smoke rose into the night sky like ghosts finally set free. Rain began to fall, heavy, relentless, turning ash to mud beneath our feet. Lorenzo didn't look back. Neither did I. The city was silent now, as if even Rome held its breath. We reached the car parked beneath a broken street lamp. Lorenzo opened the door for me, but before I could get in, I caught his hand. "Lorenzo." He turned, rain streaming down his face, washing away soot and blood. I swallowed hard. "What happens now?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me like he was memorizing every piece of my soul. "Now?" he said finally. "Now we disappear." We drove until dawn, through mountain roads that curved like secrets. Neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of everything we couldn't say. Finally, as the sky began to blush with the first light of morning, he pulled over near a quiet overlook. Below us, the world stretched wide, mist rising from valleys, sunlight spilling over old ruins and new beginnings. I stepped out, the cold wind biting at my skin. He joined me, standing just close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. "You could still go back," I said quietly. "Find peace. Build something new." He shook his head. "Men like me don't get peace. We make sure others do." I turned to him, voice breaking. "You think you're too broken to deserve love, don't you?" He met my eyes. "And you think love can fix me?" Then, for the first time since I met him, he smiled. A real, quiet smile that reached his eyes. "Maybe we're both wrong." He stepped closer, the sunrise painting his face in gold. His hand brushed a strand of hair from my cheek, lingering there. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Running away with me?" I shook my head. "I regret not doing it sooner." He exhaled, a sound halfway between relief and disbelief. Then he leaned in. Our lips met, slow, trembling, alive. It wasn't the kiss of sinners seeking forgiveness. It was two souls finding a home in the fire they survived. When we finally pulled apart, his voice was a whisper against my skin. "I spent half my life chasing revenge. But the only thing I found that felt real," he paused, voice breaks, "was you." I pressed my forehead to his chest, feeling his heart, strong, steady. "Then don't lose me." He smiled softly. Never. The sun broke fully over the horizon. We stood there, two fugitives reborn in the light. No more mafia, no more bloodlines, just Lorenzo and Isabella, a love written in ruin and rebirth, and for the first time in forever, I wasn't afraid of what came next. We thought the sunrise meant it was over, but freedom, I've learned, always demands its price. We drove north through the mountain passes, quiet roads, empty villages. Lorenzo's arm rested on the steering wheel, his other hand loosely around mine. He didn't say much, but the weight in his eyes spoke louder than words. When he finally did speak, it was low and tired. There's one last debt I have to settle. I turned to him. What do you mean? He kept his gaze on the road. My cousin Marco. He's still out there. He won't stop until he has what's left of the Russo name. I felt my pulse quicken. Then we run farther. Lorenzo shook his head slowly. If we keep running, someone else dies in our place. This ends with me. Hours later, we reached an abandoned vineyard at the edge of Lake Como, a place once owned by his family, before blood turned it into a graveyard of memories. The gate hung broken, vines crawling over rusted steel. We parked inside. He looked at the house, half burned, half standing. This is where it started, he whispered, and where it should end. Inside, the air smelled of dust and rain. He loaded his gun, not out of rage but resolve. I stood near the window, heart pounding. You don't have to do this alone. He turned to me, eyes full of something raw and unspoken. I do. Because if I don't, he'll find you. I stepped forward. Then we fight together. He stared at me, torn, the soldier and the lover inside him colliding. Finally, he nodded once. Stay behind me. No matter what. Headlights cut through the rain outside. A black car rolled up the dirt path. Marco Russo stepped out, leather coat, cigarette between his teeth, and that cruel smirk of a man who'd never lost. Cousin, he called out, voice echoing through the vineyard. You brought your little bride. How poetic. Lorenzo stepped forward into the rain. Gun in hand, this ends tonight. Marco laughed. Oh, it ends, but not the way you think. Behind him, two men emerged with rifles. Lorenzo fired first, clean, precise. Two bodies dropped. The vineyard erupted with chaos. I ducked behind a pillar, heart hammering, ears ringing. The air was thick with smoke and thunder. Then Lorenzo fell to one knee. Lorenzo! I screamed, running toward him. He caught me with one arm, blood seeping through his shirt. Stay back. Another shot tore through the wall behind us. He turned, returned fire, the echo ripping through the rain. When it ended, Marco lay on the ground, eyes wide, a smear of crimson across his chest. Lorenzo stood over him, chest heaving. Marco's last breath came out in a hiss. You'll never escape who you are, Lorenzo's voice broke. Maybe not, but I can give her a life without me. He dropped the gun and sank to the ground. Blood pooled beneath his palm. I ran to him, cradling his face. Don't you dare leave me now. He smiled weakly. I told you. Freedom has a price. Tears blurred my vision. Then let me pay it with you. He touched my cheek, fingertips trembling. You already have. You gave me something worth dying for. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. The vineyard glowed with lightning and memory. His head rested against my shoulder, his voice fading like the last whisper of a storm. Promise me, Isabella. Don't run from the light again. I clung to him, sobbing, I won't, not ever. And as dawn broke through the rain, his hand went still in mine. It's been 1 year since the vineyard, 1 year since the rain took everything and gave me back my life. The world looks different now. I live by the sea, in a small town where no one knows the name Russo. Some mornings, I walk down to the shore and watch the waves roll in. Each one feels like a heartbeat, steady, alive, eternal. I used to think love was about forever. Now I know it's about moments, the ones that change you, the ones that stay, even when the person doesn't. There's a small cafe near the pier, all white curtains and warm light. I sit there every afternoon, sketching in an old notebook. People think I'm an artist. Maybe I am. But what I really draw are memories. The way he smiled with the sunrise behind him. The scar on his hand he never talked about. The look in his eyes when he said, "Come with me now." I went with him, and I'd go again, even knowing how it ends. Some evenings, when the sky turns gold and the wind smells like rain, I feel him near me, not as a ghost, but as a promise. Don't run from the light again. I keep that promise every single day. Last week, I found a letter tucked between the pages of one of his books, The Count of Monte Cristo. The edges were worn, his handwriting familiar and strong. I read it once, then again, then I just held it, as if the paper could still carry his heartbeat. Isabella, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't give you forever. But if there's any justice left in this world, you'll find peace where I couldn't. And when you see the dawn breaking after the rain, know that I'm there, loving you still. I folded it carefully, placed it back inside the book, and smiled through tears. He never believed he could be saved, but he was, in the only way that mattered. Sometimes I still dream of him, not in fire, not in blood, but in sunlight. He stands on the balcony of a place that doesn't exist anymore, and he looks at me with that same quiet defiance. And when I reach for him, he always whispers, "Come with me now." And I do, every single time. Love doesn't always last forever, but sometimes it's strong enough to echo across it. And for me, Lorenzo Russo's love will always be the sound that plays after the rain. If you felt every heartbeat of this story, if you believed even for a moment that love can survive after the storm, then don't leave just yet, because more stories like this, of forbidden love, of second chances, of passion and danger, are waiting for you right here. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join our world of cinematic love stories, where every week another heart begins to speak. This is just the beginning. Subscribe now and never miss the next story that will stay with you after the rain.